Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something warm, soft, and honestly a little mysterious. Because you're stepping into a medieval street where the air smells like toasted grain and sleepy smoke, and every shadow looks like it's hiding a secret. You're here to figure out why bakers, of all people, were the ones wandering around in the dead of night, working hours that would absolutely destroy your modern sleep schedule. Seriously, you'd last maybe 10 minutes out here, between the cold stone alleys, the uneven cobblestones, and bread that doubles as a blunt weapon. You wouldn't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I always love seeing the little constellation of night owls across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a narrow medieval lane now, your breath forming a pale cloud in the cold air. The moon hangs low, dangling between the crooked rooftops like some lazy lantern that refuses to go home. Everyone else has already retreated indoors, doors barred, shutters hooked, the world sealed up tight. But ahead of you, there's still one place awake, the bakery. A tiny flame flickers behind the shutters, and you hear the unmistakable sound of someone poking at a fire. A slow scrape, a sigh, a muttered complaint that sounds suspiciously like someone swearing at a lump of dough. You take a step closer, and warmth washes over your face. Real warmth, not the imaginary positive energy kind everyone talks about online. It's the heat of a stone oven that's been burning since sunset. The door to the shop is cracked open just enough for you to smell the mingling scents. Slightly sour levain, roasted grain, damp flour on wooden tables, and that earthy char that clings to everything touched by fire. Inside, the baker is already awake. He looks like a man who's been awake for centuries. Thick forearms dusted in flour, hair sticking in every direction. A face that somehow simultaneously says, "I love my craft," and "I haven't slept since the last eclipse." He doesn't see you yet. He's too busy wrangling a mountain of dough, punching it the way modern people punch keyboards in traffic rants. This is your first taste of the medieval baker's world, a shop glowing like an ember while the rest of the town sleeps like stones. As you watch, you realize something oddly enchanting. This bakery is the heartbeat of the night. You didn't expect that. You thought nights were for thieves, guards, maybe the occasional drunk stumbling home from an inn. But here, the night belongs to bread, and to the people stubborn enough, or unlucky enough, to coax it into existence. The baker wipes his hands on his apron and finally notices you, though he doesn't seem alarmed. People in this era are used to unexpected visitors. Between traveling merchants, stray cats that think they're employees, and mysterious figures who whisper gossip, the bakery door might as well be revolving. He nods for you to step inside. The moment you cross the threshold, you're surrounded by warmth. Not just physical warmth, emotional warmth. The kind of warmth that makes you think, you know what? I could live here. Maybe I should quit my job and become a medieval baker. Don't worry. That fantasy will fade the moment you remember they didn't have air conditioning, dental insurance, or flavored coffee syrups. You look around the shop. The walls are darkened from decades of smoke. In one corner, woven baskets are stacked like sleepy giants waiting to be fed. Wooden peels lean against the oven, their handles worn smooth by generations of hands. The baker's tools aren't fancy, but each one looks like it has a story, probably involving accidental burns or ill-timed naps. You notice something else. The entire place is quiet, except for the gentle crackling of fire and the steady rhythm of kneading. It's peaceful, cozy, but also curious. Why is he doing all of this work now? Why at an hour when no one is awake to buy anything? You can't help but wonder if this whole night shift thing was invented by people who hated sunlight or had something to hide. The baker gestures toward the glowing oven, and you step closer. The heat intensifies, washing over your hands like a wave. This oven isn't just a tool. It's a living creature, hot, demanding, temperamental. It needs constant attention. One wrong move, and your entire livelihood turns into charcoal. No pressure. You hear the baker speak, his voice low and gravelly, like someone who swallows dust for breakfast. He mentions that this is the quietest part of the night, when the dough rests and the town is still, when he can listen to the crackle of the fire and think about the day ahead. He mentions, almost offhandedly, that this shift has existed longer than he's been alive. That catches your attention. A shift isn't just a habit. It's tradition, culture, maybe survival. Why did medieval bakers work at night? Was it about controlling fire in crowded wooden towns? Was it the laws about when ovens could burn? Was it the chaos of communal baking hours? Or something stranger, like the rumor you heard once about certain bakers guarding secret recipes the way dragon slayers guard swords? Even the baker shrugs when you ask. Everyone works at night, he says, as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Has always been. And then he smirks. Besides, bread waits for no one. He returns to shaping dough, and you watch his hands move with practiced ease. He folds, presses, stretches, and rounds each loaf with the confidence of a man who knows exactly how dough should feel, even in the dark. You wonder if bakers back then were basically human thermometers. Honestly, they might have been. After all, the average medieval kitchen didn't come with a handy digital thermometer or a YouTube tutorial titled, 5 Signs Your Dough is Underproofed. In the corner, a small hourglass slowly drips sand. A reminder that time is always slipping, slipping, slipping. And for bakers, time is everything. Too soon, the dough rebels. Too late, it collapses. Baking is like babysitting something extremely fragile that screams silently if you look away for 2 seconds. You lean closer to the oven again, soaking in the warmth. Outside the shutters, the street is still dark, but you hear distant footsteps, a night watchman making his rounds. Somewhere, a dog barks. A cat leaps onto a nearby counter, sniffs a tray, and receives a gentle but firm shoo from the baker. Life is quiet, but awake. In the back of the bakery, you notice a small wooden sign with faded markings. It might be the baker's family mark, or perhaps the symbol of the local guild. Hard to tell. Medieval symbols all look like someone doodled with dramatic purpose. Some historians still debate. The baker murmurs suddenly, whether night baking started because of safety, or necessity, or law. He shrugs again. But either way it works. And as the dough rises, as the oven breathes, as the town outside sleeps under the heavy blanket of night, you feel it. You're standing at the threshold of a world where bread isn't just food. It's survival, economy, community, and craft. Tonight, you've just stepped through the first doorway. You stay inside the warm little bakery a moment longer, letting your eyes adjust to the glow of the fire. Outside, the night still hugs the town tight, the kind of thick, muffled dark that makes even your own heartbeat sound too loud. But inside, the baker's steps scrape across the floorboards with purpose, like someone who has done this exact dance every night of his life. He jerks his chin toward the street, as if inviting you to look. And when you do, you finally notice something subtle, something you missed before. The street isn't just empty because everyone went to bed. It's empty because no one is allowed outside. You walk toward the open doorway and peek out. The only figure you see is a watchman, bundled in wool, carrying a lantern that swings with every step. He pauses at the corner, listening, as if the night might be hiding trouble. His hand rests on the hilt of his short sword, not because he expects a battle, but because rules are rules, and the towns of this era are obsessed with enforcing them. The baker wipes his hands again. Curfew, he says. You get used to it. You glance back at him, eyebrows raised. Curfew? As in mandatory? As in go inside or face a fine? As in, this isn't the kind of charming bedtime rule parents make up, but the kind enforced by people with actual weapons. He shrugs, like it's obvious. No one's permitted to roam past sunset unless they have business. Our business, he nods at the oven, is fire. You step into the street, just far enough for the cold to bite your cheeks again. A heavy wooden gate blocks the far end of the lane, and you suddenly realize the town isn't just sleeping, it's sealed. Gates locked. Patrol routes fixed. Streets patrolled like arteries pumping through a body afraid to bleed. This is where it sinks in. Nights in medieval towns weren't peaceful. They were controlled. Fire, theft, disease, they all traveled faster in the dark. So the town decided long ago that life after sundown needed order. And order meant curfew bells, fines, and guards who took their job a little too seriously. You watch another patrol pass by. Their boots crunch on the frost-covered stones, and their breath clouds the air as they check each doorway. No one wants to explain why they're outside. No one wants a misunderstanding. People follow the rules. Yet here you stand, right next to the only building officially allowed to glow at night. The baker taps the doorframe. Every evening, after the bell rings, bam. Town sleeps. Except us. He smirks. Someone has to make breakfast. He says it casually, but you sense the weight beneath the joke. Bakers weren't just up late. They were exempt from curfew. Trusted. Relied upon. Expected to work while everyone else stayed hidden. You imagine how strange that must feel, to be both essential and invisible, awake while the town dreams. As the baker turns back inside, you follow him. The warmth is addictive. The dough on the table now looks alive, softly rising under a cloth like something breathing in its sleep. You brush your fingers over the coarse fabric. Still warm. Still growing. The baker glances at it, nodding approvingly. Night is when dough is patient, he says. Quiet air. Slow rise. No crowds banging on the door asking if their loaf is ready. He rolls his eyes at the thought, and you can't help smiling. Even in the Middle Ages, customers were customers. Still, you can't shake the thought. Why couldn't bakers just start earlier in the morning? Why work all night? As though reading your mind, the baker sighs and sits on a low stool. If you want bread at dawn, dough needs hours. If it rises too fast, it collapses. Too slow, it sours. Curfew sets when we work, not the other way around. He leans back, rubbing his eyes with flour-smudged knuckles. Even in the dim light, you can see the exhaustion etched deep into his features. This job isn't romantic. It's survival. Outside, the patrol bell rings once, just a soft note drifting through the air like a reminder of the rules pressing in on the sleeping town. The baker continues. Authorities worry about fires, thieves, drunks, you name it. Streets need a curfew to keep things predictable. His expression wrinkles. But we're the exception. Ovens can't wait. Dough can't wait. Bread doesn't care about the law. He laughs under his breath. Sometimes I think the curfew exists to keep everyone else in line while we deal with the real danger. Your ears perk up. Danger? The baker gestures toward the oven. This glowing, hungry creature made of stone. You ever seen a bakery fire? Town burns like a torch. Everything's wood. One stray spark, he whistles. Gone. You swallow. Suddenly the night feels less peaceful. More like a balancing act. One where fire readiness and public safety are wrapped tight around each other. But something else hangs in the air, unspoken. You decide to ask the question hovering in your mind. Did the curfew cause the night shift? Or was it the other way around? The baker tilts his head, considering. His eyes drift toward the window, toward the empty streets. Some historians still argue about that, he murmurs. Maybe curfew came first. Maybe bakers shifted to night because the law boxed them in. Or maybe towns wrote the laws because bakers were already working late and someone got nervous. He smiles faintly. Whichever it was, the night belongs to bread now. A faint wind presses against the shutters. The cat from earlier creeps back in, tail swaying like a metronome. It hops onto a flour sack and curls into a ball, clearly deciding the bakery is the coziest place within a 10-mile radius. The baker doesn't chase it away this time. Even the animals know, he mutters. Only fools and bakers are awake at this hour. You pace slowly around the shop. The longer you stay, the more you feel the rhythm of this world. The slow rising of dough. The pulsing glow of the oven. The patrol bells marking the hours. And through it all, a strange sense of solitude. Not loneliness, just quiet awareness, like you're standing inside the mind of the town while it sleeps. You realize the night shift isn't just about bread. It's about control, managing fire, people, danger, and time. The curfew shapes the town's schedule, and the bakers shape the town's mornings. You're watching the gears that turn under the surface of medieval life. The baker stands again, stretching. His back pops like a door hinge. Enough rest, he says. Dough's ready. He folds the cloth back, and the smell hits you like a warm embrace. Yeasty, rich, slightly tangy. He lifts the dough with surprising grace, dividing it into rounds. Each movement is deliberate, confident. You watch the town through the window one more time. The street is empty, but alive beneath the silence. The curfew doesn't feel oppressive. It feels like a giant exhale, a night-long pause that makes this quiet work possible. And here you are, in the middle of it, learning that sometimes the night shift isn't a punishment. It's a tradition, shaped by law, fear, necessity, and maybe even pride. The baker looks at you once more. If you want to see how the rest of the night works, he says, you'd better stay awake. You nod, because the truth is, you're just getting started. You stay by the warm oven as the baker begins shaping the dough, but he pauses long enough to give you a look that says, if you think this job is weird now, just wait. You're already soaking in the glow of the bakery, but the night is far from over, and your feet, now comfortably thawed, are apparently ready for another little adventure. The baker grabs a heavy cloak from a hook, tosses it to you, and gestures toward the back door. Come on, he mutters. You should see where we really bake. You blink. Really? If this blazing oven isn't the main event, then what is? He pushes the door open, and cold night air spills in, pulling a shiver straight down your spine. Outside, the narrow alley bends around the backs of clustered houses like a spine made of stone and shadow. The air smells different here, less like warm bread and more like damp earth and chimney soot. You follow him, footsteps soft on the frost, and soon you notice something odd: other bakers. A few lanterns bob ahead, swinging slightly as figures shuffle toward the same destination. Hunched shoulders, flour-smudged sleeves. The universal walk of people who did not choose to be awake at this hour. You trail the baker into a wider courtyard where a massive circular building waits in the dark. At first, you think it's a kiln or maybe a forge, but then you see the door, a thick wooden slab reinforced with iron bands, and the faint orange glow leaking from vents along the roof. The baker raises an eyebrow, waiting for you to put it together. A communal oven, a giant one. And now you understand why the bakery you just left had such a small oven. It wasn't meant to feed the town. The real baking happened here, where everyone shared the same fire. The baker pushes the door open, and a wave of heat nearly knocks you backward. The building is enormous inside. High vaulted ceiling, blackened beams, an oven so wide that 3 grown men could lie inside and still not touch the walls. Not that anyone should try that. You'd be well done in 3 minutes. Half a dozen bakers are already inside, elbowing for space like people fighting over the last charger at an airport. Some carry trays of dough. Some carry long wooden peels. Some carry the dark circles under their eyes like badges of honor. You notice something else. Everyone looks slightly annoyed. That very specific, universal annoyance that says, we didn't choose this. Some guy with a quill and a stamp made this happen centuries ago. The baker sees your confusion and grins. Taxes, he says. You blink. Taxes made you do this. Oh yeah, he nods. And laws. And fees. And rent. And fines. Don't forget fines. You look around the giant oven building again. It makes so much sense now. Heating a private oven used to cost a fortune. Firewood was expensive. Fuel was regulated. And in many towns, bakers weren't allowed to run their own oversized ovens because authorities didn't trust anyone not to burn the entire place down. So the town built one massive oven and charged bakers by the hour, by the loaf, or, depending on the era, by whatever creative tax a city official dreamed up while bored. You walk beside the baker as he finds a spot in the chaos. Sometimes, he mutters, we pay a tax for using the oven. Sometimes we pay a tax for not using it. Once a year we pay a tax for being registered bakers, then a tax for renewing the tax. You stifle a laugh. Sounds familiar. He continues shaping the dough, explaining the system while slipping in a weary sigh every few minutes. We're assigned time slots. Since most townsfolk want fresh bread at dawn, we have to bake everything during the night. And because we all share this place, the night gets divided into lanes like a highway for overheated, sleep-deprived bakers. You examine the oven more closely. The heat radiates outward in shimmering waves, carrying with it the smell of toasted flour, caramelized crust, and smoke that's lived inside these stones for centuries. This oven has seen more bread than you've seen emails. A young apprentice rushes past you, balancing a tray of dough. He almost drops it, but manages to save it with an impressive mid-air scoop. The baker pats him on the back. You'll be fine, he says. Only 3 more hours. You don't know whether that's encouragement or a warning. As more bakers arrive, the room grows louder, voices bouncing off the stone walls, mixing with the crackle of burning wood. Everyone talks at once. Everyone argues at once. Everyone has an opinion on who's hogging too much heat. It's like a medieval version of a group project that nobody volunteered for. You lean toward the baker. So this whole night shift thing, just to avoid taxes? He snorts. Avoid? No, we pay them anyway. The night shift is because the oven schedule doesn't care about our preferences. He gestures toward a wooden board hanging near the entrance, covered in chalk marks. Names arranged in columns. Time scratched in messy rows. Some marks partially erased, rewritten, shifted around. A medieval spreadsheet. See, he says proudly. They give us hours when the oven's free. Most of those hours happen when respectable people are asleep. So here we are. A baker beside you mutters something under his breath about how the mayor should try waking up at midnight for once. Another complains that the communal oven always runs hotter on the left side than on the right, and someone else swears that his loaves shrink mysteriously when he bakes next to his rival. You feel a laugh rising. Humans haven't changed at all. They just used to argue about crust instead of Wi-Fi. The baker slides his first loaf onto a long peel and walks toward the giant oven. Heat pours out of the opening like liquid gold. Sweat beads instantly along your forehead. He slides the bread in with a practiced flick. As the door closes, he nods to you. This place keeps food in every home. Keeps the city fed, but it also keeps the treasury happy. His smile grows wry. Some historians argue that these communal ovens were built less for safety and more to control taxes. Makes you think. You step back, feeling the heat press against your chest like a heavy quilt. The air is thick, almost syrupy. Bakers move around you with the strange grace of people who know exactly how close they can stand to fire without becoming part of the recipe. You turn to the baker. So the secret night shift is just the math of survival? He nods. Bread waits for no one. But tax collectors? They're always awake. A round of soft laughter ripples through the room. Even in the Middle Ages, people knew the punchline. You settle beside the baker, watching the oven glow brighter as the loaves begin to rise inside. The night feels alive, warm, bustling, somehow comforting. And you realize something. This isn't a punishment at all. It's a ritual shaped by rules, economics, and a little shared misery. The baker wipes sweat from his brow. Hope you're ready, he says. The night's still young. And with the fire burning hotter than ever, you step deeper into the world of the medieval baker, where the night isn't quiet and the bread tells its own story. You stay near the giant communal oven, the heat brushing your face like soft breath from some prehistoric creature curled inside the stone. The bakers move around you, sliding loaves in and out with the calm urgency of people who have accepted that fire, and not the clock, is their real boss. But something shifts in the room. A new baker rushes in, covered in so much flour, he looks like a small snowstorm that learned to walk. He slams the door behind him, breathing hard. Everyone stops. They know that look. Fire, he pants. Immediately, every head in the room swivels toward him. Not panic, just a long, exhausted groan that you've only ever heard from people who've worked far too many shifts. Not here, he says quickly. Down by the Tanner Street. They caught it early. The room exhales. Shoulders unclench. Conversations resume. You watch this, eyebrows raised. Does that happen a lot? The baker beside you snorts. Everything catches fire. Bars catch fire. Workshops catch fire. Houses catch fire. People catch fire if you give them long enough. The whole town is wood, packed tight, with roofs that might as well be tinder. He pats the massive oven behind him. This is why we're awake. We're the night watch on behalf of everyone sleeping. You turn toward the oven again, feeling the weight of those words. The fire inside isn't just warmth, it's danger. Contained, monitored, respected. You look at the bakers and suddenly understand. They're not just cooking, they're guarding. The baker gestures for you to follow him to the far side of the building. There, you notice something strange, a bucket chain. Dozens of wooden buckets stacked neatly against the wall, each one marked with soot rings. Long poles with hooks lie beside them, polished smooth by countless hands. Town rules, he explains. If you run an oven, you're responsible for watching the flames all night. If the fire changes color, if the smoke shifts, if sparks jump, you deal with it before it deals with the town. You crouch to examine the buckets. Some still smell faintly of old water. Some smell like smoke. Some smell like bread. You decide not to question that part. The baker leans against the wall, cracking his knuckles. Your modern world has, what, fire extinguishers? He asks. We had these. He kicks the closest bucket lightly. You grin. Fire safety in the Middle Ages really was just good intentions and a lot of hoping. But the baker isn't done. Every town had its own rules. Some places required bakers to stay awake until dawn. Others forced us to place lanterns outside so guards could see if the oven was too hot. Some towns even made bakers pay fines if their chimney produced too many sparks. He sighs with the tone of a man who has been fined in several different centuries. You head back toward the oven with him, feeling the heat pulse through the floorboards. The closer you get, the more you notice the subtle things bakers watch. The way flames flicker along the back wall, how the smoke curls at the top of the dome, the sound of wood cracking at just the wrong rhythm. You didn't know fire could have moods. But here it does. A baker across the room suddenly slaps his peel against the table. Too much smoke, he calls out. Everyone freezes. Your pulse quickens. Even the cat from earlier, who somehow followed you here, stops mid-groom with one paw in the air. The baker steps forward, eyes narrowed. He stares into the oven like a doctor diagnosing a stubborn patient. It's fine, he finally says. Just a wet log. The entire room relaxes, and someone mutters. Thought we were going to have another incident. You raise an eyebrow. Incident. The baker's expression softens into a grin he probably shouldn't enjoy that much. Let's just say someone once overloaded the oven, and the flames got enthusiastic. He gestures vaguely upward. You follow his gaze, and see a patch of ceiling beams much darker than the rest. Charred. As in, oops, half the roof tried to leave. You take a cautious step away from the oven. Does that happen often? Depends who you ask, he replies. Some historians say these communal ovens caused half the fires in medieval Europe. Others say they prevented fires because trained bakers were watching them all night. He shrugs. The truth's probably somewhere confusing in the middle. You stare at the blackened beam again, unable to decide which version feels more believable. The baker loads another loaf into the oven, and as he does, a new sound rises through the building, the night wind rattling the roof tiles. Outside, the town is utterly silent. No footsteps, no carts, no chatter, just that cold wind and distant watchman bells marking another hour closer to dawn. A baker across the room yawns so wide you can practically hear his soul leaving his body. Someone else slaps his arm. Stay awake, they warn. Flames don't sleep. You watch as the baker nods, blinking rapidly. He pulls a stool close to the oven and sits, staring at the fire like someone guarding a sleeping dragon. It's strangely hypnotic. The glow, the crackle, the quiet responsibility. You sit beside him, feeling the heat warm your face again. After a moment, you ask, does it get easier? He laughs. No, but you get used to pretending. Another baker walks past, overhearing. If we fall asleep and the oven flares up, he says lightly, the council will have our hides. And the market will riot because they can't eat burned bread. He says it like a joke, but the threat feels real enough. You watch the flames dance, shifting from orange to deep red to a whisper of blue at the edges. They're beautiful, but also terrifying. Alive, hungry, eternal. For the first time since stepping into this world, you understand why the night shift isn't optional. The baker leans back, rubbing his eyes. Town needs us awake. If fire sleeps alone, it dreams of disaster. He nods toward the door. Come on, I want to show you something. You follow him outside again, where the cold air bites at your collar. He leads you along the edge of the courtyard, toward a small tower built against the wall. At the top, a watchman stands with a horn slung across his chest. This tower, the baker whispers, only matters because it listens to us. If bakers sound the alarm, the tower wakes the whole town. We're the first line of defense. The watchman raises his lantern toward you both, recognizing the baker with a nod. There's a quiet understanding between them, an alliance forged by fire and darkness. You realize you're standing at the crossroads of survival. Bakers watch the oven. Watchmen watch the town. And the town sleeps. All because fire never does. As you return to the communal oven, the heat reaches out to you again with warm, open palms. And you think, just for a moment, that maybe guarding the night isn't a burden. Maybe it's a form of trust. The baker smiles as he sits back down, ready to watch the flames once more. Hope you're not tired yet, he says softly. Night's still long. You sit beside the baker a little longer, watching the flames sway inside the giant oven. But then he pushes himself to his feet, brushing ash from his sleeves. All right, he says. Time to stretch your legs. We've got somewhere to be. Somewhere? At this hour? You glance toward the shuttered doorway, half expecting another round of freezing wind and confused livestock. But the baker only gestures for you to follow him, his voice softer now. Dawn's not far, and you should see what we're working for. You step outside into the quiet courtyard. The sky overhead is still deep blue, but there's a faint silver edge gathering along the horizon, like someone slowly unrolling morning with careful hands. The baker leads you through the narrow alleys, past shuttered homes and dark wells and carts waiting patiently for daylight. The town feels different now, not asleep, exactly, but holding its breath. As you walk, you start hearing something subtle, a distant murmur. Not voices yet, but movement, rattling wheels, hooves, a soft chorus of fabrics rustling in the cold. The baker notices you listening. That, he says, is the market waking up. You follow him to a broad square at the town center. It looks empty at first, just cobblestones, a dark fountain, and lantern poles poking at the sky. But as you step closer, you see shadows emerging from every direction like little constellations of tired ambition. Merchants. They come in early, painfully early, pushing carts, carrying baskets, leading donkeys that would clearly rather be anywhere else. Their breath fogs the air as they argue about stall space, haggle over who gets the sunny spot when the sun finally shows up, and complain about the cold in the universal language of people too underpaid for such hours. And that's when it hits you. These people expect bread at sunrise. Not at noon. Not whenever it's ready. At dawn. You glance at the baker, who stands with his arms folded, watching the square fill with vendors. See, he says, this is why we work the hours we do. If the bread isn't ready when the first customers show up, the whole market collapses. A woman hauling a crate of onions shouts toward you. Bread boy, is it almost done? You look around, confused. She points at the baker, who shouts back. It'll be out of the oven by first bell. She nods as if that's the answer she needed to survive another day. Then she sets up her stall, muttering about bitter winds and greedy tax collectors. You and the baker step a little closer to the square. Vendors are stacking apples, brushing dirt off carrots, pouring grain from sacks, inspecting jars of honey, sharpening knives. Everything moves with a sort of grumpy urgency that reminds you of airport staff sprinting to the next gate. The baker gestures to the growing crowd. People travel from villages all around. They need food they can carry. Food that doesn't spoil in a day. Bread is the backbone of these markets. You scan the scene again. Market guards set up lanterns. A fish seller dumps a bucket of cold water on his table, muttering something about keeping the smell down. A cloth merchant smooths out bolts of linen with the precision of someone displaying artwork. And you realize something. Without bread, none of this works the way it should. Merchants eat it on the road. Townsfolk buy it before buying anything else. Children beg for scraps while their parents shop. Housewives need leftover crumbs into stews. Bakers aren't just feeding hunger, they're feeding commerce. The baker leans toward you, dropping his voice. Some say markets were scheduled early because the bread was ready then. Others say bakers had to finish by dawn because the markets needed it. Scholars still argue about it. He shrugs. Whatever came first, the two are married now. You watch as a merchant lights a lantern, and the glow spreads across the square, revealing faces, lined, tired, hopeful. Every single one of them waiting for the same thing, fresh bread. The baker gives you a nudge. Come on, we've got to get it there before the crowd grows. You retrace your steps with him, back through the winding alleys that feel less empty now. The sky grows paler, streaked with faint rose and lavender. Birds start chirping in that irritatingly cheerful way that makes you question your relationship with nature. Back at the communal oven, you step inside and feel the blow of heat again. The bakers are more alert now, fewer yawns, more chatter, more movement. Everyone knows the deadline is approaching. Loaves are pulled out, checked, tapped for hollow sound, and lined up on wooden boards. Your baker pulls his tray from the oven. The loaves are golden, steaming, crust singing with tiny crackles as they cool. The smell is intoxicating. Warm, tangy, sweet. The kind of smell that convinces you life might be okay after all. He loads the loaves into a large basket, covers them with a cloth, and nods toward the door. Let's go. Once again, you follow him through the alleys. But now the market square is fully awake. More lanterns lit. More vendors arriving. The hum is louder. You hear laughter now, tired but genuine. Two men argue loudly over who arrived first. A woman counts coins with the intensity of a mathematician trying to balance an unstable universe. The baker slips into the square with practiced ease. Several vendors wave him over instantly, calling for their usual orders. He begins handing out loaves, exchanging coins, and nodding at familiar faces. You notice how people straighten a little when they see him, the way they visibly relax. Bread means the day can start. You stand beside him, watching as a butcher buys 2 loaves, a potter buys 1, a shepherd buys 3, claiming the sheep get stressed without their share, which you're 95% sure is nonsense, and a little girl tugs at her mother's sleeve, whispering urgently for bread before anything else. The baker hands her a warm roll and gives you a wink. First customer of the day? Always gives good luck. You glance up. The sunrise finally spills into the square, soft, peach-colored light creeping between the rooftops. Vendors breathe easier. Customers start arriving. The whole town seems to inhale at once, then exhale into motion. And in the middle of it all stands the baker, tired, flour-dusted, proud. You see it clearly now. This night shift isn't just tradition. It's infrastructure. It's rhythm. It's the quiet machinery that makes dawn possible. The baker finishes his deliveries, tucks a few coins into his apron, and nods for you to follow. Come on. Market's not the only thing that wakes up early. You fall into step beside him, your breath visible in the morning air. And as you walk, you realize dawn isn't the end of the night shift. It's just the halfway point. You follow the baker away from the bustling market, weaving back into quieter lanes where the sunrise hasn't yet reached. The sky is warming, but the town still feels half asleep, as if dawn needs a moment to finish booting up. You trail behind him, listening to the soft crunch of frost under your boots and the distant hum of merchants settling into their stalls. The baker glances at you over his shoulder. Market's done for now, he says. But we've got something else to check before the town wakes properly. You raise an eyebrow. More baking. He smiles, a tired but mischievous one. Not baking. Mixing. He leads you down a sloping alleyway toward a small, squat building tucked behind a butcher's shop. From the outside, it looks like a shed that gave up on its dreams long ago. But the baker unlocks the door with an oddly delicate key, glancing around as though checking for spies. You step inside, and immediately understand the secrecy. This is the mixing room. It's not much, a low wooden roof, a single narrow window, and a heavy table covered in flour, dough scraps, and bowls of ingredients arranged with near-religious precision. The air is thick with smells, yeast, malt, sourdough starters bubbling with quiet life. The baker closes the door behind you gently. This, he says, is why we really work at night. You tilt your head. To mix dough in secret? He nods. You think bakers share everything? Absolutely not. He walks to the table, lifts the cloth off a clay jar, and reveals a pale, frothy mass inside. It smells tangy, sharp, alive, like the memory of 1,000 loaves. Every baker has a starter, he says. But not all starters are the same. Some grow sweeter. Some rise faster. Some give bread a darker crust. These jars, he taps one gently, are worth more than gold. You swallow. Suddenly you understand the careful lock on the door, the low whisper in his voice, the strange pride radiating from him. This isn't just dough. This is heritage. Strategy. A weapon in the competitive world of medieval carbs. The baker pulls out a wooden bowl, sets it on the table, and pours in flour with the elegant flourish of someone who has done this thousands of times. Mixing dough, he explains, isn't something you want others watching. A rival's apprentice sees you add the wrong handful of salt, and boom, they copy your recipe. He shakes his head solemnly. We can't have that. You watch as he cracks his knuckles and slips his hands into the flour like dipping into warm sand. He mixes with calm, controlled movements, folding the flour over itself. At night, he continues, no one sees how we measure. No one sees how long we need. No one spies on our starters, or tries to steal a scrap of dough to analyze it. You raise an eyebrow. People actually did that. He shoots you a look. You have no idea how competitive bread is. Across the room sits another jar, this one darker, thicker. The baker nods toward it. That one's my mother's starter. Older than I am. She whispered every detail to me before she passed. When to feed it, what temperature it likes, how it reacts to storms. He pauses, a softness flickering across his face. Some say starters take on the personality of their baker. Mine's stubborn, but reliable. He kneads the dough rhythmically. Fold, press, turn, letting you hear the gentle thump of his fists hitting the wood. It's a soothing sound, like a heartbeat with flour dust. You close your eyes briefly and let the rhythm float through you. He gestures for you to come closer. Feel the dough, he says. Go on. You touch it. Warm, pliable, ever so slightly sticky. Like holding the future of breakfast in your hands. You see, he murmurs. Every bakery in town has its secrets. Some guard their spice ratios. Some guard their oven temperatures. Some guard how long they ferment. If we mix dough during the day, other bakers could peek through the window, or pretend to borrow something, or send a child to ask for water. You laugh. A child spy. He nods gravely. The deadliest kind. People let them in. Another baker slips into the room quietly. An older woman with sharp eyes and white hair wrapped in a scarf. She nods to you, then to the baker you've been following. Morning, she says. Or whatever hour this is. The baker gestures toward her. This is Marta, keeper of the barley mix. Don't let anyone near her recipe. She rolls her eyes. Last week someone tried. Almost broke their fingers. You step back instinctively. Marta kneads her own dough silently, her movements fast and precise. At one point, she notices you watching and says, if you think we're paranoid now, you should have seen the Guild Wars. You perk up. Guild Wars? As in actual wars? She chuckles softly. Bread wars. Bakers accusing each other of stealing methods. Some towns even had court cases about who invented what loaf. She smirks. People get emotional about crust. Your baker nods. Some historians argue that guild restrictions created the secrecy. Others say secrecy existed first, and the guilds just formalized it. He flips the dough elegantly. Either way, night is when we guard our craft. You look around again. This little room buzzing softly with life, with yeast, with quiet competitiveness. And you see the truth. This isn't paranoia. This is survival. Skill. Craftsmanship. In a world where recipes are wealth, technique is currency, and bread determines a family's prosperity, secrecy is a necessity. The baker folds the dough one last time and sets it into a wooden bowl. This batch will ferment for hours, he says. Slow, quiet, patient. No one watching. By the time the sun is high, it'll be ready to shape. Marta pats her dough and covers it with a cloth. You can always tell who mixes at night, she adds. Their bread tastes like confidence. You grin. And who mixes during the day? She shrugs. Desperation. The baker ties his apron a little tighter and wipes flour from his palms. All right, he says. We've done what we needed here. Time to check the next phase. Next phase? You ask. His smile deepens. Oh yes. You didn't think the night shift ended with dough, did you? He steps into the doorway, morning light edging around him like a halo of soft gold. Come on, he says. There's more to this craft than secrets. And you follow him out. Into the waking world, into the shifting day, into a story still rising. You follow the baker back into the pale morning light, though morning still feels like a generous word. The sun is technically above the horizon, but the alleys remain tucked in shadow, chilly and quiet, like they're politely waiting for you to finish your tour before waking properly. The baker moves with a purpose you haven't seen since the night began, less sleepy, more resigned. You're about to meet the people who make our lives difficult, he mutters. Oh good, you say under your breath. Finally some conflict. He gives you a tired side-eye. Trust me, you won't enjoy this one. You walk together until the alley opens into a narrow square. At the center stands a tall wooden structure, half tower, half shed, with a small emblem carved above the door, a loaf, crossed with 2 wheat stalks. It reminds you of a logo designed by someone who never quite passed art class. The baker's size. The guild hall. You blink. The baker's guild? He nods. The guild that watches everything. He knocks on the door, 3 quick taps, like someone knocking on fate's front porch, and the door swings inward with a creak that sounds extremely judgmental. Inside, the hall is dim but certainly awake. A few candles flicker along the walls, illuminating rows of shelves cluttered with scrolls, seals, measuring rods, and most importantly, scales. Lots of scales. Every kind of scale. Big ones, Tiny ones, rusty ones, scales so elegant they look like they belong in a royal vault. You get the feeling none of this is for decoration. At the back of the hall sits a long table where 3 guild officers stare at you like you walked in tracking mud across their clean floor. The baker nods politely at them. You can tell he respects the guild, in the same way someone respects thunderstorms. Necessary, but deeply inconvenient. One of the officers, a tall, thin man with the expression of someone who ironed his soul, leans forward. You're late. The baker straightens, bracing himself. We brought bread to the market first. The officer sniffs. Humph, market can wait. Regulations can't. You watch this little back and forth, feeling a strange urge to pull up a chair and munch on popcorn. The tension is thick enough to spread on toast. The officer gestures sharply. Come forward. Time for inspection. The baker steps to the table, placing a wrapped loaf onto the scarred wooden surface. The officers peer at it like it's a questionable gemstone. One pokes the crust. Another taps it. A third lifts it, eyes narrowed, comparing the weight to a chart. You whisper, is this normal? The baker whispers back, normal? This is breakfast for them. You bite your tongue to keep from laughing. The officer sets the loaf down. Acceptable, he says, in the tone of someone handing out the world's stingiest compliment. The baker bows his head slightly. Thank you. The officer's gaze shifts to you. And this one? Your soul teleports out of your body. I'm just observing. The officer says suspiciously. We'll allow it. You step behind the baker again, casually hiding yourself like a nervous barn cat. As the officers scribble notes onto parchment, the baker leans closer. Guild rules, he murmurs. Every loaf must meet the standard weights. Every baker must follow the set schedule. Night work isn't optional. It's assigned. You blink. Assigned? As in they tell you exactly when to bake? He nods. Every hour. Every shift. Every rotation. The guild keeps everything fair, or at least tries to. You glance around the hall again. Scrolls line every shelf, each labeled in cramped handwriting. You imagine each one is a rule, a regulation, a guideline, a complaint, a correction, a fine. The baker continues. Bakers used to compete so fiercely that guilds had to step in. They said working during the day caused too much chaos, too many disputes, too many crowds, too many accidents around hot ovens. You grin. Let me guess. They said night was calmer? He laughs. Guilds always say that. But calmer? No, just quieter to enforce. He nods toward the shelves. Every baker in town gets assigned a slot. Some work from sunset to midnight. Some from midnight to dawn. And if someone breaks schedule, he stops. The officers have suddenly turned their eyes to him again. Scheduling disputes. One of them says. The baker clears his throat. No, just explaining guild protocol. Good, says the officer. We don't want misunderstandings. You fight the urge to step behind a piece of furniture. The baker pulls you aside, lowering his voice so the officers can't hear. Some historians argue the guilds enforced the night shift to maintain quality control. Others say they just like power. Hard to say. He glances at the officers again. I have my theories. The guild master stands and walks toward you both. He holds a long wooden meter stick decorated with increments marked in careful ink. Today's audits are complete, he announces. Your next shift begins at sundown. Do not be late. The baker bows again, too respectful to rebel, too tired to care. As you both exit the hall, you feel the air freshen the moment the door shuts behind you. The baker steps into the square, takes a long breath, and mutters, I swear they feed on tension. You laugh. They don't seem so bad. He shoots you a very pointed look. You weren't here last winter when they introduced Rule 47C. You raise an eyebrow. What's Rule 47C? He shudders. Mandatory crust thickness inspections. You burst out laughing before you can stop yourself. He sighs dramatically, but you can see the smile tugging at his lips. As you walk away from the guild hall, he finally says, Look, guilds keep the peace. They make sure no one cheats customers with underweight bread. They make sure ovens are safe. They try to prevent fights among bakers. But their rules, they're strict. So strict that eventually, the only time left to work was night. You both step back onto the main road, where sunlight is slowly spilling across the stones. The town is waking. Vendors call out to early customers. A dog trots past you carrying a piece of something it probably wasn't supposed to have. The baker stretches, bones cracking like a wooden door hinge. Night work, secret mixing, inspections, every part of this life is shaped by guilds. You follow the rules, or you lose your license. License, you repeat. He nods. A baker without a guild license is like a fish without water. Can't sell, can't bake, can't open a shop. They control everything. You glance back at the guild hall, its sign catching a sliver of sunlight. It looks less like an office now and more like a courtroom wearing an apron. As you turn the corner, the baker pats your shoulder. You've seen the guild, he says. Now you'll understand why we bake when the town sleeps. He grins. And we're not done yet. You follow him toward the next alley, your steps falling into rhythm beside his. The story is still rising, just like dough in a warm bowl. You walk beside the baker as the morning strengthens, the sunlight draping itself over the rooftops like a warm quilt that the town hasn't quite earned yet. He squints up at the sky, then shields his eyes with a flour-dusted hand. Too bright already, he mutters. Dough hates fast mornings. You blink. Dough hates mornings? He nods firmly, as if this is common knowledge. Yeast works better at night. You raise an eyebrow. Yeast has a schedule? Oh yes. He gestures down another alley, motioning for you to follow. And if you want to see why, you'll need to visit the fermentation room. This time he leads you through the back door of his bakery, the one you didn't notice earlier because it was half buried under sacks of grain. He pushes it open, and a cool, gentle darkness spills out, wrapped in scents so subtle they almost brush past you instead of hitting you. Sourness, warmth, damp wood, the faintest sweetness. Inside, everything feels slower, calmer, almost sacred. It's a long, narrow chamber lined with wooden shelves stacked with bowls, jars, and linen-covered baskets. Some are rising gently, others resting, others bubbling quietly like they're whispering secrets into the air. The baker lowers his voice without being told. This is where the real magic happens. You stand still, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light. Unlike the intense heat of the communal oven or the bustling square of the market, this place is cool, soft, almost tender. You can feel the temperature difference immediately, the steady, comfortable chill that keeps the dough from waking up too quickly. The baker pulls back the cloth from one of the bowls and reveals a mound of dough rising like a slow breath. He dips 2 fingers into it, lifts them, and watches the strands stretch and fall back in a silky ribbon. See that, he whispers. Perfect. You're mesmerized. Why nighttime, though? Why is it better? He chuckles softly, then leans against the shelf. Yeast is alive. It eats, breathes, expands. But it's sensitive, too sensitive. Sunlight, heat, drafts, even noise. He gestures broadly. Daytime is chaos. Doors slamming, carts rolling, guild officers shouting, children running. Yeast hears all of it. You blink. Yeast hears. He shrugs. Feels. Responds. Close enough. You try not to imagine tiny yeast creatures plugging their ears. The baker crosses the room to a particularly large jar, sitting high on the shelf. He lifts it down with the solemn care of someone handling a royal crown. This one likes the cold, he says, holding it up in the dim light. It rises slowly, gives a deeper flavor. But if I left it out in the daytime sun? He waves a dismissive hand. Dead. Melted. Spoiled. He steps closer to you, voice dropping even softer. Night is when the temperature stays steady. No sudden warmth. No gusts of hot wind. Just quiet air, cool stone, and patience. You run your hand across the nearest shelf. The wood is smooth from decades, maybe centuries, of moisture, kneading, wiping, drying, starting again. The air hums with invisible activity, like 1,000 tiny workers toiling in absolute harmony. The baker lifts the cloth on another bowl. This dough is softer, looser. It jiggles slightly when he touches it. This one's a fast riser, he says. Feeds quickly. Works best after midnight. He grins. Reminds me of apprentices. Quiet for hours, then suddenly hyper. You laugh under your breath. The sound feels almost too loud in this peaceful room. He walks to a different corner, where a jar sits wrapped in wool cloth. Now this one, he says, tapping it lightly, is temperamental. Needs warmth, but not too much. He leans closer, as if telling the jar a secret. We keep you cozy, don't we? You're starting to believe bakers in this era had long conversations with dough the way modern people talk to their plants. The baker wipes his hands on his apron. Some historians argue that bakers chose the night shift because the yeast performed best then: slow, steady fermentation, better flavor, better texture. He tilts his head. Others say that idea came later, and people just like romanticizing yeast. He shrugs. Either way, night air's good for dough. You step deeper into the room, noticing the way the floor is slightly sloped toward a drain in the center. The walls are thick to keep the temperature trapped. Only one small vent sits near the ceiling, letting in a whisper of fresh air. Everything here is designed for stillness. You wonder aloud. So the dough rests here all night? He nods. Hours. Sometimes longer. Depends on the season, the humidity, the mood. You pause. The mood of the dough? He nods again, very seriously. Oh, absolutely. Dough has moods. Angry dough collapses. Happy dough rises. Sleepy dough needs folding. Proud dough tries to escape the bowl. You try very hard not to picture a loaf with legs. The baker kneels beside one of the lower shelves and pulls out a bowl covered with a damp cloth. He lifts the corner just enough for you to see the bubbles forming at the edges. Tiny, delicate, alive. Night gives us time, he says. Time for fermentation. Time for flavor. Bread shouldn't rush. If we baked at noon, everything would ferment too fast. He points to the ceiling. Hot roofs. Hot walls. Hot streets. The dough doesn't like any of it. You listen, watching the dough breathe like a sleeping creature. It's strangely calming. This quiet space where time stretches, where nothing is urgent, where the world outside could be burning or celebrating or arguing, and the dough would continue rising at its own patient rhythm. You lean against the cool wall and inhale deeply. The air smells different here, older, wiser, like it's been through many nights and remembers each one. The baker sets the bowl back gently. People think we work at night because the market demands it, or because the guild forces it, or because the ovens run safer then. And those things are true. He pauses, brushing flour from his wrist. But between you and me, he nods toward the quietly rising dough, eyes softening. This is the real reason. The night makes better bread. You step beside him, feeling the truth settle into you. The dough rises because the town sleeps, because the world is still, because the night carries a softness the day can't offer. The baker meets your gaze, lowering his voice to a whisper. Are you ready to see what comes next? You nod slowly, because now you understand. The dough isn't the only thing transforming in the dark. You and the baker leave the fermentation room slowly, as if afraid the dough might notice and sulk in your absence. The door clicks shut behind you, and the cool hush inside is replaced with the faint, growing hum of the waking town. Dawn is crawling fully into the streets now, warm lights slipping over rooftops, poking into alleys, making the stones glimmer like they've been quietly polished overnight. The baker stretches his arms and rolls his shoulders. All right, he says, we've let the dough rise. Now comes the fun part. You raise an eyebrow. Fun for you. He smirks. Depends on who you ask. For the guild? Oh, absolutely. He leads you down a narrow lane toward a small courtyard behind the bakery. A long wooden table sits in the center, surrounded by tools, scales, knives, wooden molds, baskets, and a ledger so battered it looks older than the town itself. You recognize one of the items immediately, a scale. But not just any scale, the scale. The kind you saw in the guild hall. Twin brass pans hanging from a tall iron stand, perfectly balanced, gleaming in the morning light like it's proud of itself. You groan. Oh no, more weighing? The baker laughs. Oh yes, much more. He sets down a fresh bowl of dough, light, airy, beautifully risen, and divides it into smaller rounds with practiced precision. As he shapes them, you notice something interesting. He isn't eyeballing anything. Every cut, every fold, every pinch is deliberate. He shapes one loaf, sets it on the scale, adjusts a pinch of dough, and rechecks it. Why so exact, you ask? It's bread, not jewelry. He gives a dramatic sigh. I wish. He points to the ledger. The guild has rules about weight. Every loaf must match the standard for the day. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Today. You blink. The standard for the day? He nods grimly. Prices change. Grain quality changes. Seasons shift. So the guild recalculates loaf weights constantly. He gestures for you to look at the ledger. You lean over it. The pages are filled with numbers, formulas, grain ratios, and, your favorite part, angry scribbles in the margins from bakers who clearly disagreed with the math. And if a loaf is underweight, you ask. His jaw tightens. Fines. And if it's way underweight? He grimaces. Serious fines. And if it's underweight and the guild officer is in a bad mood? He closes his eyes. We don't talk about that. You watch him work with renewed respect. He shapes another loaf, sets it on the scale, and nudges off a tiny excess with a flick of his thumb. The balance tips perfectly. He nods in satisfaction. Good. One down. He motions for you to look at the alley behind the courtyard. This is why we bake right before dawn. Bread loses moisture. Moisture means weight. Weight means law. Oh, it finally clicks. You feel your stomach twist in sympathy. So if you bake too early, he gestures sharply. Loaves dry out. Lose weight. Suddenly, every baker in town is a criminal. You imagine a loaf shrinking by a few grams and a guild officer appearing from the shadows like some medieval Batman. Terrifying. The baker continues working, shaping each loaf with care. Bakers in this town learned long ago, bake too early, get fined. Bake too late, miss the market. Work at night, hit the perfect window. He sighs. Simple. You stare at him. That's not simple. He snorts. You're right. It's awful. But it works. As he weighs the next batch, an elderly baker shuffles into the courtyard carrying his own bowl of dough, grumbling loudly. Lost 2 coins yesterday, he mutters. Weight was perfect in the morning, cursed thing dried out by noon. The baker you've been following shouts back. Told you to keep them covered. The old man waves him off. Bah, bread shouldn't need babysitting after it's baked. The two exchange bickering that has the unmistakable flavor of longtime rivals and reluctant friends. You smile. Even in the Middle Ages, professional drama is eternal. The baker returns his attention to the scale. You see, he murmurs, the guild thinks this system keeps everyone honest. Customers get full-sized loaves. Bakers stay consistent. But it means we chase weight all night. He taps the scales pan lightly. Some historians argue the weight laws made bread safer. Others say it just made bakers miserable. He shrugs. Probably both. He shapes another loaf and hands it to you. Here, he says. Try the scale. You hesitate, then place it onto the brass pan. It dips heavily. The baker squints. Too big. He pulls off a pinch of dough. You try again. Still too big. He removes another pinch. You try again. Now it's underweight. He groans. This is why apprentices cry. By the time the last loaf hits the tray, you feel like you've been playing the world's slowest game of Tetris. The baker ties the cloth over the basket with a satisfied nod. Perfect, he says. The guild can bite us, and we'd still pass. You laugh. That's comforting. Very. He wipes his hands on his apron. All right. Now that the weights are exact, the loaves can rest a bit. But not too long. The guild checks random batches. And if the bread cools too much before inspection, weight loss, you finish for him. He nods proudly. You're learning. You lean back against the wall, feeling the sun warm your shoulders. The courtyard is quiet, except for distant market chatter and a rooster somewhere that sounds like it regrets being alive. You glance at the basket of perfectly weighed dough rounds. So baking right before dawn isn't just tradition. It's tactical. He grins. Exactly. Bread is warfare. You blink. That sounds dramatic. He nods gravely. Bread is dramatic. You both sit on the steps for a moment. Him with the posture of a man who has fought many door-related battles. You with the posture of someone witnessing bread politics for the first time. Finally, he stands and pats the basket. Ready? For baking. He gives you a sly smile. For the next part. You rise to follow him, brushing flour dust off your sleeves. Because now you understand something important. Bread isn't just food. It's regulation. It's timing. It's strategy in the shape of a loaf. And you're about to see just how deep that strategy goes. You follow the baker out of the courtyard, the basket of perfectly weighed dough tucked under his arm like a newborn he refuses to let anyone breathe on. The streets are brighter now, but still soft. Morning's early light drifting lazily across rooftops and catching in puddles left from last night's frost. You expect him to head straight for the oven. He doesn't. Instead, he pauses at the mouth of an alley and scans it like a spy checking for assassins. You raise an eyebrow. Everything okay? He holds up a finger. Shoo. Not yet. He peeks around the corner, then steps into the alley only after confirming it's empty. You follow, confused but curious. The alley is narrow, shaded, quiet. A cat watches from the top of a barrel, blinking at you with extreme suspicion. When you reach the far end, the baker turns to you with a grim expression. We can talk now. You cross your arms. What exactly are we avoiding? He takes a long breath. Other bakers. You stare. Other bakers? Like your coworkers? He snorts. No. Rivals. He glances behind you again, making sure the alley is still empty. This town doesn't just have competition. It has espionage. You blink, unsure whether he's joking. He isn't. He steps closer and lowers his voice. If you think bakers are friendly, cooperative, cuddly people united by the love of wheat, you haven't lived here long. He shifts the basket under his arm, tightening his grip. We guard our dough. We guard our starters. But we also guard our techniques. And some people, he nods toward the cobblestones, are willing to steal them. You look down at the stones as if expecting a spy to pop out like a cartoon gopher. The baker gestures for you to walk with him again, but he keeps his voice low, eyes alert. There used to be a group, he says, a little brotherhood of bakers who snuck around at night copying whatever they could. Measurements, oven temperatures, dough handling, even how someone folded a loaf. You blink. Wait. People stole folding techniques? He nods. You'd be surprised what makes a loaf special. A tiny change in tension, a different fold, a minute more rest, it all matters. He sighs. Some bakers started sending apprentices to spy on others, pretending to borrow tools, asking innocent questions, sneaking into workshops, even following people home. That seems excessive. He shrugs. Bread is profit. Profit is survival. You walk in silence for a moment, hearing only the distant sounds of the market and the soft creaking of shutters being opened. The baker continues in a quieter tone. Once, a rival tried to steal my mother's starter. Climbed in through the window at night. Your eyes widen. Did they get it? He shakes his head. My mother left a fake jar for anyone dumb enough to try. You choke on a laugh. A fake jar? Oh yes. Flour paste mixed with vinegar. Smelled real enough at first, but the moment they used it, it collapsed like wet laundry. You grin. That's diabolical. He winks. She was. Bless her. You pass by a row of empty stalls and stop near a stone bench where someone has carved a crude loaf symbol into the surface. The baker taps it. This used to be the meeting spot for, well, spies. He leans in. Some historians think bakers never actually spied on each other. Others say it was rampant. Personally, he shrugs. Depends on the town. He starts walking again, but slower now. Eventually, attempts at spying got so bad that bakers changed schedules. Some started working only at night, long after their rivals were asleep. Others closed shutters, locked doors, mixed dough in secret rooms like the one I showed you. You think back to the quiet mixing room with its hushed ambience and fermentation jars. Suddenly, it makes perfect sense. Night wasn't just peaceful, it was private. The baker continues. We work when it's hardest for unwanted eyes to watch. Hardest for ears to hear. Hardest for anyone to replicate what we do. You nod slowly. So the night shift is protection? He smiles. Exactly. A shield. You follow him as he turns another corner, but this time he stops abruptly. There, he whispers. You peek around him and see a figure at the end of the street. Another baker, carrying a sack and glancing over his shoulder like a guilty man in a cheap play. Your baker narrows his eyes. Yoris. You whisper. Is he spying? No. He sighs. He's trying to look like he's not spying. The figure spots you both and freezes. There's a beat of awkward silence. Then he casually turns around and pretends to admire a wall, one that has absolutely nothing on it. Your baker whispers, he did this last week. Showed up to watch when I pulled my loaves out. Thought I didn't notice. You squint. Should we confront him? He waves a hand. No. That gives him the satisfaction. He walks past Yoris with an exaggerated, breezy friendliness. Lovely morning, isn't it? Yoris nearly trips trying to respond. Ah yes. Beautiful. Love the sun. You bite your lip to keep from laughing. Once you're out of earshot, the baker mutters. That man once sent a child to ask me how many times I fold my dough. As if I'd tell him. You grin. You really do live in a world of bread spies. He nods seriously. We all do. By the time you reach the communal oven again, other bakers are arriving with the same secretive energy, some clutching baskets close, others whispering to apprentices, a few casting suspicious glances at each other like medieval detectives. The baker sets his basket down and gives you a tired smile. Espionage shaped our nights. Still does, in some ways. Work too early, and rivals can watch. Work too late, and they can follow. Night gives us the shadows. Shadows keep our techniques safe. You look around the oven hall with fresh eyes. The heat, the silence, the concentration, the careful glances from one baker to another. This isn't just a workplace. It's a battleground disguised as a bakery. You turn back to him, lowering your voice. Do you ever relax? Or is every loaf a potential scandal? He chuckles lightly. Both. He gestures to the oven. Come on. The fire's ready. You take your place beside him, a student in a world where bread is skill, currency, and guarded knowledge. And you realize something. Night doesn't just help the dough. It protects the baker too. You stand beside the baker as he settles the basket of dough onto a bench near the communal oven. The fire roars softly inside, glowing like a tamed sun, and sweat already beads across the brows of the bakers gathering around. But today, the room feels different. Tense. Crowded. More people than usual are filing in. Not just professional bakers, but villagers. Housewives. Apprentices. A pair of older men who look like they haven't agreed on anything in 20 years. They carry trays, baskets, bowls wrapped in linen, even odd-shaped lumps of dough bundled like swaddled infants. The baker sighs. Ah, wonderful. It's one of those days. You raise an eyebrow. Those days. He gives you the kind of look people give when warning you about wild animals. The communal ovens open to the town today. You glance around, and suddenly the atmosphere makes sense. The villagers hover anxiously near the oven like birds circling a food scrap. They glance at the fire, at each other, at the bakers, then back at the fire. Everyone wants oven time. No one wants to wait. The baker leans toward you with the flat resignation of someone revisiting an old trauma. Once a week, the town can use the oven to bake their own things. Stews, flatbreads, cakes, roasts, whatever they don't want to burn down their homes making. A woman marches past you carrying a pot so large it could house an entire family of raccoons. She looks determined, aggressively determined. She elbows her way to a corner table, muttering something about, last time someone stole her slot. You whisper, are these people always like this? The baker snorts. You haven't seen anything yet. At that moment, two men start arguing near the oven mouth. Man number one waves a tray in the air. I reserve this time. Man number two jabs a spoon at him. You reserve the idea of this time, not the actual time. A small audience forms around them immediately, half entertained, half horrified. You see one apprentice discreetly place a coin on the table, likely betting on the outcome. Another apprentice raises an eyebrow like this is his morning entertainment. The baker steps closer to you. The fighting always starts with the first slot. Does it ever stop? You ask. He shakes his head. Not until the last slot. You watch as a guild officer, one of the gentler-looking ones, steps between the arguing men. He holds up his hands, trying to restore order. One at a time, he insists. The oven can't handle everything at once. This statement is met with exactly zero appreciation. The villagers erupt with overlapping reasons why they deserve the opening slot. My dough is overproofed. My stew must simmer. My guests arrive at noon. My mother-in-law is visiting. Her standards are impossible. My dog ate half my first loaf. I need this one. The baker whispers, we call these the oven wars. You stare. That sounds dramatic. It is. A woman near the back raises her pot high in the air and shouts, if we don't bake now, the meat will spoil. Another woman shouts back, it's 45 degrees out, Greta, nothing is spoiling. The guild officer massages his temples. You whisper, this seems unmanageable. The baker nods solemnly, which is exactly why professional bakers prefer the night. You look around again. This is chaos disguised as domesticity. Every villager is watching every other villager with suspicion, as if someone might steal their pot or nudge them out of line or accidentally smudge their loaf. The oven roars again, and the heat intensifies. The villagers shuffle closer, jockeying for position. Children cling to their parents' legs, wide-eyed. A dog wanders in and sniffs at a basket, earning a scandalized gasp from a nearby grandmother. You turn to the baker. So, why not give everyone separate times? Like a schedule? He gives you a deadpan look. We tried that once. And we never tried it again. You watch as an elderly man slams his tray onto a table. Another villager yelps, claiming the table is hers. Someone else accuses someone of cutting in line. A teenage boy shouts, "I was holding this space," with the desperation of someone who clearly was not. The baker leans against the wall and folds his arms. This is why we had to be regulated. Why the guild structure became so strict. Professional bakers needed uninterrupted hours. And this, he waves dramatically toward the heated frenzy, is not uninterrupted. In the far corner, a woman is whispering aggressively to her daughter. "If that man touches our pie again, I swear." A guild officer steps forward, raising his staff for order. One at a time, the crowd collectively ignores him. The baker hides a grin. Some historians say communal ovens united towns. Others say they caused more fights than taverns. He shrugs. Both are accurate. Suddenly, a voice calls from near the entrance. "Who took my turn?" The entire room freezes like someone hit pause on a medieval movie. Heads swivel. Faces tighten. The tension sharpens to a fine point. The baker sighs deeply. "Here we go." A man steps forward, puffed with righteous fury. "I had the next slot. My bread is collapsing." A woman near him scoffs. "Your bread always collapses." Gasps ripple through the room. "Oh no, she didn't," you whisper. The baker nods gravely. "She absolutely did." The collapsing bread man points at her. "You stole my slot." "I did not," she snaps. "I was here before sunrise." "Liar. Idiot." "You're both idiots," shouts someone else helpfully. You turn to the baker. "Does it ever get violent?" He shrugs casually. "Only when someone bumps into the oven by accident." You stare in horror. "What happens then?" "Everyone screams," he says. "Then we reorganize the line." You watch the chaos unfold. The accusations, the arguing, the nervous glances at the fire. Then, slowly, order returns. A few villagers back away. Others shift into rightful places. The guild officer finally gets people to form some semblance of a line. You step back beside the baker as he loads his own dough onto a peel, waiting for a gap in the frenzy. "See," he murmurs. "This is why we bake at night. Peace. Quiet. No one breathing down our necks. No fights. No stew emergencies." You nod slowly, absorbing the truth. Night baking isn't just tradition, you realize. It's escape. Avoidance. Survival. The baker gives you a small, conspiratorial smile. "Ready to help me fight for oven space?" You gulp. "Am I allowed?" He looks you up and down. "You'll do fine. Just don't let anyone guilt trip you with a sob story." Someone near the front suddenly shouts, "But my husband is hungry." The baker winces. "Except that one. That one always works." You grip the side of the table as the frenzy rises again. And as the baker steps forward, peel in hand, you finally understand. A town's oven doesn't unite people. It tests them. You cling to the edge of the table as the chaos of the communal oven swirls around you. Raised voices, clattering trays, the roar of the fire. But eventually the frenzy settles just enough for order to reassert itself. A few loaves go in, a few pots come out, a few arguments lose steam. The baker slips his batch into the oven with the practiced ease of someone who has survived many oven wars. He nudges you with his elbow. "Come on. It'll be a while before our loaves finish. I want to show you something." You follow him outside into the cold again, cold that bites harder now. The morning sun hasn't warmed the streets yet, and the shadows stretch long and sharp across the stones. You pull your cloak tighter as the baker leads you down a path toward the outer edge of town. The air feels different here. Still, crisp, and colder than any morning so far. You exhale, watching white vapor curl into the air. It's freezing. The baker chuckles. This is nothing. Wait until winter has a real grip on the town." You shiver. It gets worse. Oh, much worse. He gestures toward a row of simple, sturdy houses clustered along the town wall. Their roofs are heavy with frost. Windows shuttered. Door thresholds padded with cloth. Smoke rising from chimneys in thin, weak plumes. "This is where winter teaches us who we really are," the baker says quietly. "Bread changes in winter. Everything does." He leads you to a small storage shed behind one of the houses. The door creaks open, and inside, rows of round, dark loaves sit drying on wooden racks. They're nothing like the golden, airy breads you've seen all night. These are heavier, rougher, almost stone-like. You step closer. What are these? Winter loaves, he says. Bread's meant to last. Dense, dry, hard enough to defend yourself with. You run a hand over one loaf. It's firm, solid, like a bread that has decided softness is a luxury. The baker taps one lightly. It echoes. You need food that keeps, he explains. Fresh bread molds fast, crumbles, dies. But these? They last weeks, sometimes months, if you store them right. You stare at the racks again. Rows and rows of them. An entire season preserved in flour. The baker adds, when snow blocks the roads and crops run low, we rely on these. Slice them thin. Soften them in broth. Trade them. Carry them. You feel a chill, not from the cold, but from the weight of it all. Winter here isn't just a season. It's an adversary. So, you ask softly, night baking helps with these too? He nods. Winter dough rises slowly. Much too slowly in daylight. Sunlight is weak. Air is cold. Yeast sleeps. But night, he smiles faintly. Night gives us time. We mix these loaves after dark, let them rise for hours, bake them before dawn. You realize something else. Ovens warm the town. He nods. Exactly. And in winter, we keep them burning almost constantly. Otherwise, half the town freezes. He leads you onward toward another storage building. This one larger, walls thick, built low to the ground as if bracing against storms. Inside, villagers are stacking more winter loaves, layering straw between them, arranging them with careful precision. One villager, a woman with sturdy arms and a scarf tied firmly around her jaw, glances at you. You learning? She asks. You nod. Trying. She smirks. Winter will teach you faster. You watch as she slides another loaf onto a rack. Her movements are efficient, economical, shaped by necessity. The baker lowers his voice. Winter loaves are baked at night, because the oven must be shared during the day for stews and roasting. Families gather around it to keep warm. But at night, while the town sleeps, we bake these harder breads in batches. He gestures to the racks. They need long, drying heat. Not the intense fire we use for daily loaves. A slow bake. Hours. You imagine the bakers, half asleep, bundled in wool, tending dozens of these sturdy loaves while the world outside turns to ice. The baker leads you back outside, where your breath fogs sharply again. Some historians say winter bread was the first reason bakers adopted the night shift, he murmurs. Others say it was just a necessity layered onto everything else we've seen. He shrugs. Hard to know. Winter records are always patchy. You both walk along the frozen edge of town. The silence is heavy, but not empty. Just waiting. The baker continues. In the deepest cold, we don't bake once a night. We bake 2, 3 times, small batches, big batches. Whatever we can fit. The fire becomes the town's heartbeat. And if it dies, he pauses. Well, it mustn't die. His tone sends a faint chill down your spine. A reminder that fire here is both friend and enemy. A delicate balance. You return to the communal oven hall, following the path of faint footprints pressed into frost. When you step inside, the warmth hits you like a blanket thrown fresh from the dryer. You close your eyes for a moment, soaking in the relief. Villagers still scramble around, shouting about pot lids and arguing over stew temperatures. But your baker presses past them, finds his place by the oven, and checks the loaves inside. Golden crust, steaming tops, small cracks forming like tiny lightning bolts. Perfect. He pulls them out, one by one, placing them on the wooden bench. You smell the sweet tang of fermentation meeting heat. The crackle of cooling crust fills the air with soft music. The baker exhales deeply, a long, satisfied breath. Winter reminds us why night matters. You nod slowly. Because the world doesn't stop. He glances at you, a small, approving smile forming. Exactly. Night is when we work. Winter is when we endure. A villager nearby mutters something about someone stealing her stew spoon. Another complains that her nephew dropped dough on the floor. The guild officer tries, again, to restore order. And through all of it, the baker stands steady. You realize that winter baking is more than survival. It's community. It's rhythm. It's preparation for the months that test the soul. He hands you one of the warm loaves. Here, he says, you've earned this. You cradle it gently, feeling its heat radiate into your hands. And for the first time tonight, you understand, bread isn't just life here. It's winter's answer. You hold the warm winter loaf in your hands a moment longer, letting the heat settle into your palms like a small, reassuring heartbeat. The baker gives you a nod, half gratitude, half invitation, and starts walking again, weaving through the ever-chaotic communal oven hall. You follow close behind, dodging trays, elbows, and one very determined child carrying a pot twice her size. Outside, the air strikes with cold teeth again. The frost hasn't melted. Sunlight hasn't reached this part of the town yet. Everything feels pale and still. The baker glances over his shoulder. You've seen the practical reasons for night work, he says. Now it's time for the stranger ones. You raise an eyebrow. Stranger? As in what, dangerous? Magical? Cursed? He smirks. Depends who you ask. He leads you toward a quieter district. Narrow houses, crooked chimneys, windows with iron bars, for reasons you don't want to think about. Unlike the lively market square or the heated oven hall, this part of town holds a different energy. More whisper than shout. You hear murmuring before you see the people. A small cluster of villagers gather around a stoop, hands wrapped in shawls, eyes darting. The baker mutters, "Here we go." You approach the group, and immediately they hush, like children caught stealing honey. One of them, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, leans closer to whisper to another. Another villager clutches a wooden charm. Someone else crosses himself. Their fear is almost palpable. You glance at the baker. What exactly is happening? He sighs. Rumors. He leads you past them, but you catch fragments of whispered phrases. The bread rose too fast. It means the spirits are restless. Night Doe heard something. It's a sign. You blink. Spirits. Oh, they always blame spirits, the baker mutters. For everything. He walks on, and you follow him into a small courtyard flanked by old stone walls. He stops beside a bench and sits, motioning for you to do the same. There've always been superstitions around night baking, he says. People think bread absorbs more than water and yeast in the dark. He gestures vaguely toward the sky. Some say it takes on the mood of the night, the shape of dreams, the whispers of the dead. You blink again. The dead. He shrugs. Bread rises, bread falls. Someone decided that meant spirits were involved. He scratches his chin. And honestly, on some nights when the dough bubbles strangely or collapses for no reason, he shoots you a sideways look. You'd almost believe them. A thin gust of wind snakes through the courtyard, rattling a loose shutter. You pull your cloak tighter. The baker continues. There's an old superstition that if dough rises too quickly under a full moon, it's because the moon is trying to steal a baker's luck. You laugh. That seems oddly specific. Villagers had a lot of time to think, he deadpans. He leans back, folding his arms. There are darker ones, too. Some believe night bread can trap spirits if the dough is mixed improperly, or that ghosts slip into loaves that are left unattended. You stare. Do you believe that? He grins. I believe dough is dramatic. That's enough. A young apprentice runs through the courtyard suddenly, holding a small loaf shaped, questionably. Master, the apprentice cries. It made a face again. The baker face bombs. Oh, bring it here. The apprentice scurries over and hands him the loaf. True enough, a strange indentation across the crust looks vaguely like a frown. You squint. Is that supposed to happen? No. The baker says, poking it with a finger. But the dough was too cold. It cracked. The apprentice looks terrified. The others say it's a sign. The baker mutters. The only sign is that you rushed the shaping. Go fix it. The apprentice runs off. You raise an eyebrow. Do they always panic like that? Only when the dough misbehaves. He smirks. Fear makes good stories. He stands again, brushing flour from his apron. Let me show you something even stranger. He leads you toward an abandoned storeroom. Broken shelves, dusty walls, an old wooden table. In the corner sits a mural, faded from time. You peer closer. It's a painting of a baker kneading dough under starlight. Around him swirl ghostly shapes, like wisps or curls of smoke shaped as faces. The baker taps the mural. People used to think night bakers could talk to spirits. You blink. Talk to them? For real? He nods. Or that spirits talk to the bread. And bakers just listened. Listen to what? The future, he whispers with overly dramatic flair. Fortune, warnings, secrets. You laugh softly. Why do I feel like you're messing with me? He shrugs, smiling. Some historians think those beliefs were propaganda, stories to make bakers seem mystical and important so towns wouldn't question the night shift. Others think the beliefs were genuinely tied to religion and fear. He tilts his head. Or maybe people were just bored. You pace around the room, looking at the other faded murals, women carrying bread with halos around them, bakers offering loaves to strange winged figures, animals shaped like spirits weaving between kneading tables. It's surreal, eerie, almost dreamlike. The baker watches you quietly. People in this era live close to death. Famine, plague, fire. Bread is one of the few things that keeps you alive. So they start imagining it can protect them, or curse them, or speak. You swallow, feeling the weight of that truth. A gust of wind slips through a crack in the wall, brushing your neck like cold fingers. You shiver. The baker pats your shoulder. Don't take it too seriously. Not all the rumors are scary. Oh, he grins. Some say bread baked at midnight makes you dream of your true love. You laugh. And does it? He shrugs. Sometimes. But only if you're already thinking about someone. He starts walking back toward the communal oven. You follow, your footsteps echoing softly. But the strangest belief, he continues, is that bread baked at night carries the shape of the baker's soul. You stop. What does that mean? He looks at you with a wry, wistful smile. That every loaf carries a piece of us. Our worry, our hope, our exhaustion, our dreams. He glances at the oven hall, glowing warmly in the distance. Maybe that part is true. You walk beside him again, silence settling over you like a gentle blanket. Because suddenly, night baking isn't just labor. It's myth, legend, a tapestry woven from fear and faith and flour. And as you step back into the heat of the oven hall, villagers still bickering and flames still roaring, you realize, this town doesn't just eat bread. It believes in it. When you step back into the communal oven hall, the warmth rushes over you like a wool blanket tossed straight from a hearth. The villagers are still bickering. The bakers are still working. Flames flicker like restless thoughts. And you feel the energy of it all humming beneath your skin. The baker wipes his forehead with the back of his wrist. Everyone thinks we bake in silence, he says. Quiet nights. Peaceful hours. He gestures broadly at the room. This does not look peaceful. You laugh softly, because he's right. The place is alive. He leads you back through the doorway into the dawn-bright street, which is surprisingly bustling. You thought night baking happened in a town that slept deeply, but the more time you spend here, the more you realize that the night has its own hidden population. Come on, the baker says. Let me show you the parts of the town only we see. He walks along a side street where the frost has finally begun to melt, forming tiny rivers trickling between cobblestones. A man in plain clothes hurries past you, carrying a wicker crate of eggs. Behind him, a shepherd trots along with 2 sleepy sheep in tow, muttering complaints at them under his breath. A washerwoman pushes a cart with folded linen, mumbling angrily at the cold. And 3 boys sprint past, carrying fishing nets larger than they are. You blink. I thought everyone was asleep at night. Oh no, the baker chuckles. The town only pretends to sleep. He lifts a hand toward the far corner of the square, where a butcher is unlocking his stall. We see everyone, even the ones who don't want to be seen. As if on cue, a man in a cloak appears from behind a barrel, carrying a suspiciously stuffed bag. He freezes when he spots you both, then ducks down another alley like a startled ferret. The baker sighs. That's a smuggler. Or an idiot. Hard to tell the difference. You can't help smiling. So you know all the secret movements? Of course, he says matter-of-factly. Bakers are the eyes of the night. We know the shortcuts. We see who meets whom. We hear the whispers. And if we ever stopped baking at night, the town would lose half its intelligence. Intelligence? Like gossip? He gives a solemn nod. The highest form of intelligence. You pass a group of women in thick shawls carrying baskets of herbs. One gives you both a curt nod. The baker leans in. Midwives, he whispers. They start work early. Babies don't care about curfew. Farther along the street, you see a man hunched over a gutter with a broom. He sweeps methodically, slow strokes that barely disturb the frost. Street sweepers, the baker murmurs. This is their time, before the town wakes enough to make a mess. You watch quietly as the sweeper nods at the baker in that understated, weary way night workers recognize each other. A candlemaker crosses your path next, carrying trays filled with freshly molded wax sticks, still soft, still glistening. He works all night too, the baker says. Needs to shape the wax while it's warm. And then, footsteps. Lots of them. A patrol of tired, half-frozen guards march by, their armor clinking softly. They glance at the baker. Some nod. One even offers a faint smile. They know us, the baker says. We keep our ovens burning. They keep the town safe. We're colleagues, in a way. You walk with him down a quieter lane where the roofs form a narrow canyon overhead. The baker pauses, pointing toward a lit window on the second floor of a crooked building. See that? That's the accountant for the Merchants Guild. He works late balancing accounts. Then he points to another lit window. And that's a weaver who starts her loom before sunrise. You turn in a slow circle. So many lanterns. So many shadows moving behind shutters. You whisper, how many people are awake at night? More than anyone admits, the baker says. Everyone claims the night is silent. But it never is. There are deals, deliveries, arguments, lovers sneaking home, people too sick to sleep, people who can only think in darkness. A cart rattles by, wheels clattering, pulled by a donkey with the emotional energy of a sleep-deprived student. Atop the cart sits a man in merchant robes, counting coins by lantern glow. The baker shakes his head. Merchants, always traveling before dawn. If they leave late, they lose the best spot on the road. You realize then, the town relies on the night just as much as the day. The baker pauses beside a stone fountain, one that hasn't seen water move all winter. He sits on its edge, and you join him. You want to know something strange? He asks quietly. You nod. He leans closer. People say bakers work alone in the dark. Solitary. Silent. But really? We're at the center of everything. We hear the guards' complaints, the merchants' deals, the midwives' urgencies, the sweepers' gossip, even the smugglers' excuses. He smirks. We hear things the guild would faint if they ever knew. You grin. Are you ever tempted to tell them? He laughs. Oh, absolutely not. They'd weaponize it. A cold breeze brushes past, swirling your cloak around your legs. You pull it closer, watching breath fog up in the crisp air. The baker's voice softens. Some historians think the night shift turned bakers into unofficial observers. Others claim that idea is just romantic nonsense. He shrugs. Maybe, but we see more than most. You notice a chimney sweep emerging from a rooftop, covered in soot and ash, looking like a ghost who made questionable life decisions. He yawns so widely you fear his jaw might relocate. The baker waves to him. Friend of mine. Knows more secrets than the mayor. The sweep gives a lopsided salute before disappearing down a ladder. The baker stands again. Night isn't quiet, he says. Night connects us. Every job that can't be done in daylight, every task that needs darkness, every worker who labors unseen, they all move around us. He starts walking back toward the bakery, and you follow, hearing the soft clink of his peel tapping against his basket. And in the middle of it all, he says, is bread. Our fire. Our hours. Our eyes. You cross the final stretch toward the oven hall, and as you step inside, you no longer see it as a place of isolated bakers. It's a lighthouse in the night, a gathering point, a silent hub for the town's hidden heartbeat. You look at the baker, illuminated by the oven's glow. Night was never quiet, you whisper. He smiles warmly. And it never will be. You and the baker step fully back into the communal oven hall, just as the last traces of night loosen their grip on the world. Light pours in through the eastern windows, thin at first, like hesitant fingers, then stronger, brighter, filling the room with a soft, golden warmth that blends with the oven's glow until you can't tell where fire ends and morning begins. The baker surveys the room with a slow, satisfied breath. Villagers are retrieving their pots. Apprentices carry steaming trays. The guild officer is scribbling furiously in his ledger, probably preparing to find someone for something that no one will agree with. A few bickering voices still echo, but even those sound gentler now, wrapped in daylight's forgiving hush. The baker nudges you. This is my favorite moment, he murmurs. You tilt your head. The chaos calming. He shakes his head. The way the day starts without asking permission. You follow his gaze to the oven mouth, where his final batch of loaves is just beginning to brown. He grips the peel and pulls the first one out. A perfect golden dome that crackles softly as cool air kisses its crust. You realize that sound again. The faint, delicate popping of a loaf settling is the true morning bell of this town. The baker sets the fresh loaves on a wooden board, and the smell rushes forward. Warm wheat, tangy fermentation, caramelized crust, the scent of comfort, of survival, of beginnings. The entire room inhales. And then, as if choreographed, the door opens. The first customer of the day steps into the hall. A woman in a patched cloak. Her hair braided tightly. Her face soft with fatigue, but her eyes brighten at the sight of the bread. You watch her pick one up gently, holding it as if holding a warm animal. Still warm, she whispers. The baker nods. Always. She hands him a few coins. Nothing dramatic. No speeches. No hesitation. But the exchange feels ancient. Older than the oven. Older than the hall. Older than every argument you've heard tonight. You step outside with the baker as more townsfolk arrive, drifting toward bakeries, stalls, homes. The sun is finally awake, spilling peach-colored light across the rooftops. Frost melts into glitter. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys. Dogs bark in greeting. Children run, laughing, holding slices of still steaming bread. The baker closes his eyes for a moment, feeling the sun warm his eyelids. We work while they sleep, he says quietly, so they can wake to this. You follow him through the square as more business sparks to life. A butcher arranges cuts on his table. A fish seller slaps today's catch onto crushed ice. A seamstress opens her shutters. A blacksmith hammers the first blow of the day, loud, ringing, confident. And everywhere, you see bread. Bread tucked into baskets. Bread torn apart by eager hands. Bread dipped into pots of broth. Bread exchanged for coins. Bread cooling on windowsills. Bread sliced, shared, traded. The baker gestures toward the scene. This is why the night belongs to us. You look around. The town isn't just waking. It's unfolding, blooming outward from the center like bread dough spreading under warm hands. Every motion feels connected to the loaves baked in the dark. Schoolchildren passing a crust between them. Night bread. Guards eating quickly before their shift ends. Night bread. Merchants loading their carts. Night bread. A grandmother feeding her grandson while sweeping her doorstep. Night bread. You see a man lifting his loaf to smell it, his shoulders relaxing with that one small comfort. You see a woman trading a half loaf for a spool of thread. You see a girl using her heel of bread to tempt a stray dog closer. Bread is currency, meal, tradition, ritual, glue. The baker steps beside you, lowering his voice. Some historians say bread shaped the social order more than laws did. Others say that's exaggeration. He shrugs. But look, you do. And you see the town move like a single, breathing body, each breath flavored by the ovens. He lifts a final loaf from his basket and hands it to an elderly man hobbling across the square. The man smiles, eyes softening. Bless you, he says. The baker only nods. You walk with him to the edge of the square where he pauses, leaning against a stone wall. The exhaustion finally shows in his face, not weakness, just honesty. A full, bone-deep tiredness earned honestly. I'll sleep soon, he says. Before the sun climbs high. You smile, and then do it all again. He laughs softly, the sound warm and worn. Of course, bread doesn't wait. He lifts his gaze to the sky where the last faint traces of night melt into bright blue. The town bustles. The market clatters. Life rebuilds itself with every new minute. And you finally understand. The night shift doesn't end at dawn. It becomes dawn. The baker straightens, stretches, and walks back toward the oven hall, ready to store tools, cool the fire, and hand the day over to everyone who slept through the work. As you watch him go, wrapped in sunlight and flour and pride, you feel something settle warmly in your chest. Night baking isn't hidden. It's everywhere. In every face. In every meal. In every beginning the town celebrates at sunrise. The baker glances back one last time. Ready for the final part of the story? You nod. Because now you've walked through darkness, fire, chaos, superstition, silence, and dawn, and the journey feels almost complete. Almost. And now, as the baker disappears into the quiet warmth of his shop, and the sun lifts itself fully over the rooftops like a lantern rising through soft blue water, you feel your steps begin to slow. Not because the streets are tiring, but because the story itself is loosening its seams, unwinding the tight threads of night and easing them into the calm, open weave of morning. The town is fully awake now, but you don't need to be. You linger at the edge of the square, letting the last echoes of the night settle around you. The low crackle of cooling ovens, the faint murmur of merchants setting out coins, the tiny laughter of children chasing crumbs, the soft thud of a loaf being cut on a wooden board. They blend together into a warm, steady rhythm, like someone gently brushing sleep across your shoulders. You breathe slowly, letting the cool morning air drift in and the warm bread-scented breeze drift out. The world feels far away now, softened at the edges. Even the sunlight seems quieter, folding itself carefully over the stones as if afraid to wake you too quickly. You begin to walk, but your steps are lighter, almost floating, as though the long night has taken just enough weight from your thoughts to let you drift. The alleys blur. The rooftops lean in reassuringly. The last wisps of oven smoke curl like soft ribbons above you. And all around, the town carries on, confident, bright, alive, because of everything the night offered it. Quiet hands, steady fire, rising dough, and the watchful presence of people who worked while the world slept. Now, that work is done, and you can rest. So let your breath slow, let your mind dim, let your body soften into stillness, and let the story fade gently, like embers turning to ash at the end of a long, warm night. End of script. Sweet dreams.